Ambassador Sora's tendrils trembled as she placed her three-fingered hand on the forbidden beacon. Throughout her 60 cycles as a diplomat, she had never broken Galactic Conclave protocols. But today, as the fourth energy barrage from the Vraxis Dominion shattered the colony's tertiary shields, protocol seemed irrelevant. Ambassador, the Council expressly forbids contact with Sol 3, her aide whispered, compound eyes wide with alarm. The Deathworlders. I know what they are, Sora interrupted, her voice unusually firm. I also know that in 30 minutes there will be no one left alive on Helios 9 to punish for breaking protocol. Beyond the transparent dome of the communications center, the once beautiful azure skies of Helios 9 were stained with the acrid smoke of burning habitation clusters. The Vraxis assault had been relentless. 3 cycles of siege had reduced the peaceful Luveran settlement colony from a promising outpost of 15,000 to a desperate holdout of barely 4,000 survivors. The Galactic Conclave, bound by its non-intervention treaties, had offered nothing but diplomatic protests. The Vraxis, knowing this, had simply ignored them. Sora activated the beacon with a decisive gesture. The ancient device hummed to life, broadcasting an omnidirectional distress signal across all frequencies, including those the Conclave had designated as forbidden 2 centuries ago, after their first and only contact with the inhabitants of Sol 3. Message away, the communications officer confirmed. Though I don't know what you expect the humans to do, even if they receive it. Their quarantine zone is 17 light-years from here. Sora settled her breathing, trying to project the calm expected of a senior diplomat. I've studied the classified first contact records. The humans might be. She searched for the appropriate word, unpredictable, but they have capabilities we don't fully understand. What the official records didn't mention, what Sora had learned only through her privileged access to sealed archives, was that the quarantine had been as much for the Conclave's protection as for containing the humans. The initial survey team that discovered Earth had classified it as a Class 12 death world immediately. No sentient species should have been able to evolve there, let alone thrive. Gravity that would crush most Conclave species' cardiovascular systems. Atmospheric oxygen levels that would be considered combustible on most habitable worlds. Temperature variations that swung wildly between extremes. And the predators. The records described creatures so terrifying that the survey team had initially believed them to be the dominant species until they encountered actual humans. The humans themselves had been even more disturbing. Endoskeletal omnivores with bizarre endurance capabilities, able to pursue prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their biochemistry incorporated toxic metals like iron. They could regenerate from injuries that would be fatal to most species, and they'd developed nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight. The Conclave's response had been unanimous. Quarantine Sol 3 and hope the humans stayed there. Days passed. The Vraxis methodically destroyed the colony's remaining defenses. Sora watched the stars with diminishing hope. The emergency beacon had been active for merely 5 standard cycles with no response. Until Junior Communications Officer Pelrit's console suddenly illuminated with an unexpected signal. Ambassador, Pelrit called, his voice tight with disbelief. Incoming transmission. It's in crude galactic standard, but it's not from any Conclave world. Sora rushed to the console as text scrolled across the screen. SOS received. Hang tight. Cavalry's coming. What does cavalry mean? Pelrit asked. Before Sora could answer, the scanner array erupted with proximity alerts. Something was coming out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Something that hadn't used any recognized Conclave jump corridors. The humans had arrived. Supreme Commander Vrex of the Vraxis Dominion flexed his armored mandibles in amusement as his tactical officer reported the arrival of an unidentified vessel at the system's edge. Visual confirmation. He ordered, his translator implant converting his clicks and chirps into standard galactic common. The main view screen flickered to display what could only be described as a disappointment. The vessel was small, perhaps one-fifth the size of even the smallest Vraxis cruiser, and showed signs of extensive repairs. Its hull configuration matched no known concave design, with odd protrusions and seemingly random structural elements that defied standard engineering principles. This is what answered the Louvain distress call. Vrex clicked with derision. "Scan it. Minimal weapons signature," the tactical officer reported. "Primitive shielding. It appears to be a civilian transport vessel, possibly retrofitted for basic defense. It's broadcasting merchant identification codes." Vrex dismissed the newcomer with a contemptuous wave. "Return focus to the bombardment schedule. We break their final shield grid within the hour." "Commander," the communications officer interrupted, "the vessel is hailing us. They're using an outdated compression algorithm, but the message is clear. They're demanding we cease hostilities immediately." Laughter rippled through the command deck. "Demanding?" Vrex's translator couldn't fully convey the mockery in his tone. A single merchant ship is demanding the Vraxis Dominion cease a military operation. They claim to be the vanguard of something called the First Response Fleet. The officer continued, representing the interests of Earth. The laughter died immediately. Earth. The word hung in the recycled air of the command deck like a toxic mist. Even among the militaristic Vraxis, certain names inspired caution. Earth. Sol 3 was one such name. "Impossible," Vrex declared, though with less certainty than before. "The Deathworlders are quarantined in their system. They have no interstellar capability. 17 more vessels have just appeared at the system edge," the sensor officer announced, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Similar configurations, all small, all seemingly civilian class. On the view screen, the small flotilla of mismatched ships began to move with surprising coordination, spreading out in a formation that made little tactical sense to Vraxis military doctrine. "This is Captain Eliza Chen of the Terran vessel Mercy Finder," a transmission cut through their communications. The visual showed a bipedal creature with alarming features. Exposed thermal layers without proper exoskeletal protection, forward-facing predator eyes, and disturbingly flexible facial structures. "You are engaged in hostile actions against a non-combatant colony. Withdraw your forces immediately." Vrex recovered his composure quickly. These couldn't truly be the Deathworlders of legend. Not in these fragile ships. The quarantine must have been propaganda. A conclave fiction to explain away a primitive species. "Target their lead vessel," he ordered. A measured warning shot across their forward section. "Let's see how brave these humans really are." The Vraxis destroyer Unyielding Mandate fired a low-power plasma burst that sizzled past the human vessel's bow. It was standard intimidation protocol, enough to frighten, not enough to damage. What happened next defied explanation. The seemingly ramshackle human ships began to transform. External panels shifted, revealing concealed weapon ports. Engines that had registered as commercial grade suddenly doubled in output. Sensor readings that had shown minimal defensive capabilities spiked as previously undetectable shield generators came online. "Those aren't civilian vessels," the stunned tactical officer whispered. "Those are warships disguised as merchants." Before Vrex could respond, the human captain's face reappeared on screen, her expression noticeably harder. "That was unwise," she stated flatly. "We came prepared for diplomacy or evacuation. Since you've chosen neither, we'll proceed with our alternative protocols." The human ships accelerated to combat velocity, moving with a synchronization that belied their disparate designs. "You have exactly one opportunity to withdraw," Captain Chen continued. "After that, we'll consider your actions as explicit hostility against citizens under human protection." Vrex's mandibles twitched uncertainly as he watched the tactical display. The humans were outnumbered 20-1, yet they maneuvered as though they had the tactical advantage. "All vessels," he ordered, "maintain bombardment of the colony. Destroy any human ship that approaches the planet. on the surface of Helios 9. Ambassador Sora and the remaining colonists watched in astonishment as human shuttles, moving at speeds that should have torn them apart, began descending through the Vraxis blockade using maneuvers that defied conventional physics. The first humans to set foot on Helios 9 weren't soldiers as Sora had expected, but medical personnel and evacuation specialists who moved with urgent purpose despite the planet's atmosphere being noticeably toxic to their biology. First contact had begun. Ambassador Sora had expected many things from the legendary Deathworlders: violence, aggression, perhaps even ruthless efficiency. What she hadn't expected was the small human female currently kneeling beside an injured Luveran child, speaking soft reassurances while administering treatment for plasma burns. "The pain will stop in about 20 seconds, the human medic explained to the whimpering child. Her name badge identified her as Dr. Maya Wong. "This gel has nanites that repair tissue damage. They're ticklish, but they work fast." True to her word, the child's pain whistles subsided within moments, replaced by a surprised chirping that was the Luveran equivalent of laughter. "How is this possible?" Sora asked, watching the burn visibly heal before her eyes. "Our medical AI deemed these injuries beyond treatment." Dr. Wong barely looked up as she moved to the next patient. "Battlefield medicine is a human specialty. We've had plenty of practice." All around the colony's central gathering hall, similar scenes unfolded. Human medical teams worked with inexplicable speed, treating injuries the Luverans had considered terminal. Human engineers reinforced failing structural supports with expandable carbon fiber braces. Human logistics specialists organized the colonists into evacuation groups with remarkable efficiency. Most astonishing was their physical capability. Sora watched a human male, seemingly slight of build by their standards, lift a collapsed habitat section that would have required Luveran heavy machinery, freeing trapped colonists beneath. The humans moved constantly, worked without rest cycles, and showed no signs of fatigue despite Helios 9's gravity being 1.2 times Earth standard. "We've stabilized all critical patients," Dr. Wong informed Sora as she approached, wiping her forehead with a cloth. "We need to begin moving them to the shuttles immediately. Our fleet can't hold the Vraxis off indefinitely." As if punctuating her statement, the ground shook from a nearby impact. The Vraxis had begun targeting the areas around the colony center. "They're coming to stop the evacuation," Sora realized aloud. "You should leave while." She was interrupted by the sound of running feet as humans throughout the facility suddenly changed posture. Gone was the focus on medical care and evacuation. Now they moved with predatory awareness, retrieving compact devices from concealed harnesses. The transformation was as seamless as it was unsettling. "Vraxis ground forces incoming," announced one human, a compact communication device at his ear. Multiple assault vectors, heavy mechanized units. Sora's tendrils drooped in despair. "We cannot fight battle mechs. The colony has no defensive capabilities left." Dr. Wong smiled grimly as she pulled what appeared to be an oversized medical case from her pack. It unfolded with practiced efficiency into something decidedly non-medical. "Doctor and soldier aren't mutually exclusive professions for humans," she explained, checking the compact weapon with practiced ease. Captain Chen anticipated this. "We came prepared." Outside the gathering hall, a squadron of Vraxis battle mechs stomped into view, their particle cannons charging. Sora had seen such units demolish entire defense installations. Each stood 3 times human height, with reinforced armor plating that could withstand direct artillery strikes. A small team of humans moved to intercept, carrying what appeared to be civilian mining equipment. The lead engineer, his uniform stained with lubricant and sweat, motioned for the others to spread out. "Those are industrial drilling units," Sora protested. "They can't possibly." The deafening sound of the first mech collapsing cut her off. The engineer had somehow reconfigured the mining drill to emit a focused sonic pulse that shattered the mech's gyroscopic stabilizers. As it toppled, the humans were already moving to the next target. "Your species evolved for this," Sora asked in amazement as she watched the engineer disable a third mech by precisely targeting its hydraulic systems. The human glanced back at her, a hint of amusement crossing his features. Not exactly. But when you grow up on Earth, you learn to adapt what you have to what you need. The sound of shuttles descending drew Sora's attention skyward. Despite the aerial combat above, more human ships were breaking through the Vraxis blockade. The evacuation of Helios 9 had begun in earnest. Captain Eliza Chen grimaced as another impact rocked the Mercy Finder. The bridge lighting flickered momentarily before stabilizing, bathing the command center in its normal blue glow. "Shields at 63%, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dawson. "The Vraxis are concentrating fire on our medical evacuation corridors." Chen studied the three-dimensional tactical display hovering above the central console. The situation in orbit was deteriorating rapidly. What had begun as a rescue operation was evolving into a pitched battle against overwhelming odds. Her small fleet of 18 ships was now facing the full might of the Vraxis battle group. 47 warships arranged in their characteristic assault formation. "Status of the evacuation?" Chen asked, her voice remarkably calm despite the chaos. "Ground teams report 37% of colonists secured." Communications Officer Rivera answered. "Dr. Wang requests another 15 minutes minimum to evacuate critical medical cases." Another impact sent tremors through the deck plating. The Vraxis were adapting their tactics, focusing on the seemingly vulnerable human vessels that showed signs of damage. "We don't have 15 minutes, Dawson warned. "At current exchange rates, our shields fail in 12. Chen's expression hardened as she made her decision. "All vessels, initiate Protocol Hornet's Nest." "Confirm." One by one, her captains acknowledged the order, some with visible surprise. Protocol Hornet's Nest was a high-risk maneuver developed for situations where conventional tactics would guarantee defeat. The Mercy Finder suddenly cut main engines, allowing momentum to carry it forward while redirecting power to shields and weapons. Throughout the battle space, the other human ships executed similarly unpredictable maneuvers, some accelerating at forces that would incapacitate most species, others tumbling in apparent disarray only to stabilize with perfect firing solutions. On the Vraxis command ship, Supreme Commander Vrex watched in confusion as the human fleet seemingly disintegrated as a cohesive unit. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Their formation has collapsed." His tactical officer's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "I don't understand, Commander. They're executing contradictory maneuvers. Some appear to be retreating, others advancing. There's no unified strategy." "Target the retreating vessels first," Vrex ordered confidently. "Eliminate the cowards." As the Vraxis fleet adjusted to pursue the apparently fleeing human ships, something unexpected happened. The human vessels that had seemed damaged or in retreat suddenly executed precision turns, bringing weapons to bear on the now exposed flanks of the Vraxis formation. "They're not retreating," the tactical officer realized too late. "They're hunting." On the Mercy Finder's bridge, the Louvren observer watched in astonishment as Chen orchestrated what appeared to be complete chaos, but was revealing itself as intricate coordination. "Your ships are fighting individually, not as a unified fleet," the Louvren noted with surprise. "You must be using extraordinarily advanced tactical artificial intelligence." Chen smiled tightly as she authorized another seemingly reckless maneuver. "No AI. Just well-trained humans who grew up playing strategy games and thinking creatively." The Vraxis flagship suddenly reported shield fluctuations as a supposedly crippled human mining vessel, the Rockbreaker, reactivated its engines and executed a maneuver that should have torn it apart. Instead of ramming as expected, it positioned itself at a precise point adjacent to the flagship's command section. The mining vessel's industrial cutting equipment, designed to pierce asteroid material, now focused on a specific junction in the flagship's shields. "What are they doing?" Vrex demanded as alarms blared across his command deck. "That's a mining tool, not a weapon." His answer came when the Rockbreaker's specialized equipment created a momentary window in the shields, just large enough for a precision strike that disabled the flagship's primary communication array. As the Vraxis fleet fell into disarray, Chen noted a strange transmission being routed through her ship's communication systems. Lieutenant Rivera looked up in surprise. "Captain, our cryptography team has broken the Vraxis command codes. They're intercepting and decoding tactical orders in real time." Chen raised an eyebrow. "How long did that take them?" 46 minutes, sir," Rivera replied with evident pride. The tide was turning, but Chen knew they still needed time. The evacuation wasn't complete, and despite their tactical success, they remained severely outnumbered. "Keep them off balance," she ordered. "We need to hold until the last shuttle lifts off." "Final evacuation shuttles launching now, Captain," Lieutenant Rivera reported, relief evident in her voice. "All remaining colonists are aboard and outbound to our vessels." Captain Chen allowed herself a moment's satisfaction. Despite overwhelming odds, they had succeeded in their primary mission. The Luveran colonists were safe. Now came the harder part: escaping with them. "Status of the Vraxis fleet?" she asked, studying the tactical display where the enemy vessels were regrouping after the confusion caused by Protocol Hornet's nest. Lieutenant Dawson grimaced. "They've adapted to our tactics, Captain. They're forming a blockade at the system's jump point. 32 ships in formation, all with weapons hot." Chen nodded, having expected this. The Vraxis had taken significant losses, 15 vessels disabled or destroyed, but they still outnumbered the human fleet by nearly 2-1. More concerning was the strain on her own ships. Shields were failing across the fleet, and ammunition for their primary weapons was critically low. Ambassador Chisora, who had been brought aboard during the evacuation, stepped forward from her observer position. "Captain Chen, your people have done more than anyone could have expected. Perhaps surrender terms." "That's not how humans operate, Ambassador," Chen interrupted gently. "We don't leave people behind, not the colonists, and not our own crews." She opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All vessels, this is Captain Chen. The evacuation is complete. Prepare for breakthrough at the jump point. We tried the diplomatic approach." On the bridge screens, the commanders of her other ships nodded in understanding. Many smiled, as though sharing a private joke. "I don't understand," Sora said. "Your fleet cannot possibly break through that blockade." Chen checked her chronometer and allowed herself a small smile. "We're not going to break through it, Ambassador. We're just making sure the Vraxis stay focused on us for the next 60 seconds. Supreme Commander Vrex surveyed the battle with growing satisfaction. The human ships had fought with unexpected skill, but the outcome was now inevitable. His blockade at the system's jump point was impenetrable. "They cannot escape," he informed his officers. "Prepare final targeting solutions. No mercy for these Deathworlders who dared interfere with Vraxis expansion." The sensor officer suddenly straightened, mandibles clicking rapidly in alarm. "Commander, multiple spatial anomalies detected throughout the system." "What kind of anomalies?" Vrex demanded, turning to the main view screen. His question was answered as the fabric of space itself seemed to tear open at 53 distinct points surrounding the Vraxis fleet. Through each rupture emerged not the civilian-disguised vessels of the first response fleet, but the unmistakable silhouettes of dedicated warships, massive, angular vessels bristling with weapon systems, unlike anything in Vraxis technical databases. The largest of these newcomers dwarfed even the Vraxis command ship. Its hull was marked with the designation TDF Thermopyla and the distinctive emblem of Earth. "What is this?" Vrex whispered, mandibles quivering involuntarily. On the Mercy Finder, Captain Chen's smile widened at Tisora's expression of disbelief. "Ambassador, allow me to introduce the actual Terran Defense Force. What you've seen until now was just our civilian volunteer emergency response team." The main communication screen activated, revealing a stern-faced human female in a formal military uniform, adorned with rank insignia and service decorations. "This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force 7th Fleet," she announced, her voice transmitted simultaneously to all vessels in the system. "To the Vraxis Dominion forces, you have engaged unregistered civilian volunteers until now. They called us because they were trying to be diplomatic. We're here to restore order." Sora stared at the tactical display in shock as the human military vessels took up precise positions throughout the system, effectively surrounding the Vraxis fleet. "How many ships do you have?" she asked faintly. "Enough," Chen replied simply. The Vraxis command ship attempted to retreat, only to discover that the human civilian fleet's seemingly random maneuvers had placed quantum-fold disruptors at every viable exit vector. There would be no escape. The emergency session of the Galactic Conclave stretched into its third day. Representatives from 317 spacefaring civilizations filled the Great Chamber on Harmonious Center, the neutral diplomatic hub of the known galaxy. At the center of the unprecedented gathering stood Ambassador Sora, her testimony the focal point of what many were already calling the most significant diplomatic crisis in 5 centuries. "This is more than a breach of quarantine," insisted Councillor Velpax of the Ulrani Confederation, his luminescent appendages flashing with agitation. "The humans have revealed military capabilities that threaten the stability of the entire quadrant. The quarantine must be reinstated with additional enforcement measures." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Images of the human fleet surrounding the defeated Vraxis forces had spread throughout conclave space, causing widespread concern. Elder Matriarch Divin of the Sulphic Guardianship raised her ancient form to address the gathering. "What troubles me most is not their military might, but the deception. These humans disguised warships as civilian vessels. How can we trust a species that operates with such duplicity?" Sora waited patiently as the accusations mounted. When finally recognized by the Arbiter, she approached the central podium with careful dignity. "Esteemed representatives," she began, her translator conveying the measured tone she had cultivated through decades of diplomatic service. "I have listened to your concerns. Now I ask you to listen to what actually happened at Helios 9. The chamber quieted as Sora activated the holographic display embedded in the podium. Instead of showing the final confrontation between the human armada and the Vraxis fleet, the images revealed human medical teams treating wounded Vraxis soldiers captured during the battle. The humans did not claim Helios 9 as conquered territory, as the Vraxis would have done. They established medical facilities for injured Vraxis crew members. Their engineers helped rebuild our colony's infrastructure. Their diplomats offered to negotiate with the Vraxis on our behalf." She advanced the display to show human ships delivering supplies to the damaged colony. "In 3 cycles, they'd done more to help us than the Conclave did in 30. This while we maintained a quarantine against them based on fear rather than understanding." The Strategic Council chairman, a member of the cautious Bilrani species, leaned forward. "Ambassador, no one denies the humans helped your colony. But their military presence was a response to aggression, not the cause of it." Sora interrupted, a breach of protocol that silenced the chamber. "I initiated contact with Earth. The decision and consequences are mine alone." The chamber doors parted to admit a new delegation. Admiral Helena Vasquez entered, accompanied by several human officers and diplomats. Her uniform was impeccably formal, yet her posture conveyed a readiness that the military representatives in the chamber immediately recognized. "The Conclave has granted the human representative 5 minutes to address the assembly," the Arbiter announced, his tone suggesting this was an extraordinary concession. Admiral Vasquez stepped to the podium, her expression composed as she surveyed the gathered representatives of hundreds of worlds. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Conclave, I'll be brief. We didn't want to be here. We were perfectly content building our Dyson swarms and enjoying our entertainment networks. But someone sent an SOS, and humans don't ignore those. Ever." She activated her own data display, revealing something that caused gasps throughout the chamber. tactical data showing hundreds more human ships positioned at strategic points throughout Conclave space, all of which had arrived undetected. You've been observing us for 2 centuries, thinking you were managing a potential concern, but we've been learning your languages, mapping your territories, understanding your technologies. We could have established a presence in half the Conclave by now if that's what we wanted. Her gaze swept the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and sensory clusters of dozens of species. We don't want your territories. We don't need your resources. What we want is simple: the freedom to exist without isolation, and the right to help those who ask for it. Ambassador, Sora had never imagined she would set foot on a human vessel willingly, yet here she stood on the observation deck of the TDF Thermopylae. The massive viewport revealed the stunning sight of her homeworld, Luvara Prime, glowing sapphire and emerald against the blackness of space. "Your world is beautiful," Captain Chen remarked, joining her at the viewport. Similar atmospheric composition to parts of Earth, though with significantly less seasonal variation. "Thank you for bringing me home," Sora said. "Though I admit, I'm surprised your government allowed it, given the ongoing conclave deliberations." Chen shrugged, a distinctly human gesture Sora was beginning to recognize. Admiral Vasquez thought it would be good diplomacy. "Besides, I think she wanted you to see something." The captain gestured toward a nearby conference room. Through the transparent walls, Sora could see a group of humans engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Admiral Vasquez stood at the head of the table, listening as a civilian in formal attire emphatically made some point, occasionally interrupted by what appeared to be a scientist and a military officer. "What am I seeing?" Sora asked, confused by the apparent conflict. "Policy meeting," Chen explained. "The diplomat is arguing for immediate open relations with all conclave species. The scientist is advocating for a more measured approach with cultural exchange programs first. The military representative is concerned about security protocols." Sora's tendrils twitched in confusion. "But the admiral is their superior. Why does she permit such disagreement?" Chen smiled. "That's not disagreement. That's how we find the best ideas. Humanity isn't a unified mindset like the Vraxis or a consensus culture like yours. We're millions of different perspectives, somehow moving in the same general direction." At Sora's evident confusion, Chen led her to a data terminal. "Computer, provide Ambassador to Sora with access to non-restricted Earth historical archives." For the next several hours, Sora immersed herself in human history. What she found both terrified and fascinated her. Earth's deadliest predator wasn't some apex fauna but humans themselves. Their history contained conflicts that would have exterminated most species, yet somehow they survived and evolved. They had nearly destroyed their planet multiple times, only to save it through last-minute innovation and adaptation. "Your species nearly annihilated itself multiple times," she observed when Chen returned. "Nuclear weapons, climate disruption, biological warfare. Yet you survived." "We're stubborn that way," Chen replied. "But we learned from each crisis. The closest calls taught us our most important lessons. Most surprising was learning that humans had developed faster than light technology centuries earlier than the Conclave had realized. They had simply chosen not to announce themselves, preferring to observe and prepare while focusing on their own development." The door slid open, and Admiral Vasquez entered. Though Sora had seen her only in formal settings before, the Admiral seemed more approachable now, her uniform jacket unfastened. "Ambassador, I hope the historical archives were informative," Vasquez said, offering a gesture of respect that mimicked Luvaran tradition with surprising accuracy. "If you've had this capability all along, why wait until now to reveal yourselves?" Sora asked, the question that had been troubling her since the battle. The Admiral's answer was simple: "Because no one asked for our help before." Vasquez guided Sora to a different observation deck, this one overlooking the shuttle bay. Below, human crew members were loading supplies onto transport vessels. Medical equipment, agricultural support systems, and educational materials. These are bound for Helios 9, Vasquez explained. The colony will be habitable again within a month. You're helping rebuild what the Vraxes tried to destroy, Sora observed, despite the Conclave's restrictions against you. The Admiral nodded. Humans can hold seemingly contradictory ideas simultaneously, Ambassador. We can be both wary of the Conclave's politics and committed to helping its people. We can prepare for war while dedicating ourselves to peace. Sora's understanding of humans was beginning to evolve beyond simplistic fear. They were neither the mindless warriors of legend nor benevolent saviors. They were something more complex, a species forged in adversity that had somehow retained its compassion. 6 standard cycles after the events at Helios 9, Ambassador, Sora stepped through the ornate entrance of the newly established Human Diplomatic Center on the Conclave capital world. The architecture seamlessly blended Conclave design principles with unmistakably Earth-inspired elements, open spaces, abundant natural light, and living plants from dozens of worlds. Ambassador T. Sora, welcome back, called a familiar voice. Captain, now diplomatic liaison. Eliza Chen approached with the easy confidence that characterized her species. The Sol Accords are officially ratified, Sora announced, her translator struggling to convey her mix of relief and satisfaction. After 17 revisions and countless debates, the Conclave has formally recognized humanity as a full member species with special dispensation for your unique approach to galactic affairs. Chen smiled. Only took 6 cycles. Admiral Vasquez predicted 7. So we're ahead of schedule. The diplomatic center bustled with activity unlike any other embassy in the Conclave district. Where other species sent only their most distinguished representatives, humans had established a rotating presence of scientists, artists, educators, and even younger generations. Currently, a group of human children was demonstrating Earth games to the fascinated offspring of various Conclave diplomats. Your approach to representation is unorthodox, Sora observed. Most species consider diplomatic posts the domain of career specialists only. If you're going to understand humanity, you need to meet more than just our official representatives, Chen explained, guiding Sora through corridors lined with artwork from both human and Conclave worlds. We want you to see all aspects of who we are. They entered a monitoring center where screens displayed real-time data from across the galaxy. One section was dedicated to emergency response coordination, where human operators maintained constant communication with vessels deployed throughout Conclave space. The Emergency Response Network has responded to 27 distress calls in the past cycle, Chen noted with evident pride. Not just from Conclave worlds, but also from independent systems and even 3 Vraxis colonies affected by stellar flare activity. The Vraxis Dominion, after experiencing the full diplomatic engagement and economic partnerships offered by humanity's network of previously undisclosed settlements, had agreed to peaceful coexistence. The once aggressive empire now participated in cultural and scientific exchange programs with former adversaries. From my assignment on Earth, I've observed something remarkable about humans, Sora said as they reached an observation platform overlooking the Conclave Central Plaza. You developed remarkable defense systems, yet devoted enormous resources to environmental preservation. You constantly exchange different viewpoints, yet unite immediately when faced with a crisis. Sora paused, watching species that had never interacted before the humans arrived now engaged in animated conversation below. I was asked by a Conclave researcher what we should understand about humans. I told them, you call your homeworld Earth. We call it a death world. The distinction matters. Chen raised an eyebrow inquiringly. What we see is a hostile environment of constant challenges you see as home, Sora continued. What we interpret as unpredictability is often just humans being creative. You didn't evolve to change the galaxy. You evolved to thrive against all odds, then succeeded because of it. In the distance, a human emergency response vessel departed the spaceport, responding to yet another call for assistance from a distant system. The emergency signal from Helios 9 didn't just save one colony, Tesora concluded. It transformed our understanding of what's possible. Your species learned to turn evolutionary challenges into remarkable strengths, seeing offering assistance when needed not as extraordinary, but simply as the expected course of action. Chen smiled, watching as more ships prepared for departure, vessels carrying not weapons of war, but supplies, medical teams, and engineers to worlds that had never known such support. That's the essence of humanity, she said quietly. We're committed to ensuring no one faces their difficulties alone. We've had too much experience overcoming our own. As the sun set over the conclave capital, casting long shadows across the plaza below, representatives from hundreds of worlds moved among each other with a new sense of possibility. The quarantine was over. The Deathworlders had arrived. And the galaxy would never be the same.